Well, it looks like we have ourselves a genuine conundrum. A quandary, if you will. A real-life dilemma. I thought we'd play a game. One hand. The winner decides who lives and who does not.
Well, man, you and I got a chance to check out a pretty early screening of John Wick 3, and you and I both. Four. I'm sorry.
That's
John
the second time in the show that you messed that part up, but it's okay. Right. It's all right.
Well, and maybe there's a reason for that for me. But we did enjoy the first three John Wick films. I was a big fan of the first one when it came out. It was this really sliding under the radar kind of action film that did things differently and explored this man who really had this deep love for his dog, and it was much deeper than that, of course. But there was something about his love for a dog that sparked the inciting incident in that original. And dogs have continued to be a part of this franchise throughout, including episode 4 of John Wick the Fourth. So give me your thoughts of Mr. Reeves back in action in the black suit, black tie, black shirt.
Yeah, so as I walked out of the theater, I found myself feeling somewhere between pure exhaustion and raw adrenaline. This is a film, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes long. It didn't need to be almost 3 hours, but I'm glad it was. This was basically the director's cut, and we got it all. Everything that Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves wanted to do as far as pushing the boundaries of action filmmaking, it's on full display here. And I think this is a film that seeks to answer the question, how much action is humanly possible to fit into a
movie? Yes, and they did it in multiple scenes that felt like 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes long per episode of fight scenes. It felt like watching many episodes of series, is what it felt like, for sure, for me anyway.
Yeah, and we get some nunchuck action in here. We get some action with playing cards, also incendiary shotguns. But at the same time, there is so much action that I still find myself asking for a little bit more variety in certain scenes. And I think that's just because we hold these movies to such a high standard in that regard. You look at the third John Wick movie, within the first 10 minutes, he was killing people with a book in a library. Then we got the incredible knife sequence also in the first 30 minutes of John Wick 3. And then riding through Central Park on a horse, fighting against motorcycle-bound assailants.
Yes.
And then he goes to the desert in Morocco. And here in John Wick 4, there's a scene early on that takes place in a desert landscape again. And I thought this was going to be a sign of more things to come in terms of right. John fighting across different, diverse natural environments all over the world. But here he sticks mostly to the cities for the rest of the movie, which isn't a bad thing in itself because the filmmakers, they do brilliant things with the cities as backdrops and all the nooks and crannies within the cities. But I still wish we'd gotten more varied terrain. Maybe take John Wick to the Appalachian Mountains or take him to an Irish fishing village like we saw in the Banshees of Inisherin or the rolling hills of New Zealand like we see in the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies. I would like to see John Wick take on those terrains, see how he fares.
Yeah, this was very much urban landscape as far as the battles are concerned. And there were battles aplenty from a story standpoint and a dialogue standpoint. The story was pretty simple, Thomas, and I'll let you maybe in a sentence you can talk about the story, but the urban landscape fights, and there were fights throughout. I'd say the first 15, 20 minutes there were fewer, but man, once it started, it did not let up. You talked about the length of this film. The length of this film was a drawback to me, and I said it coming out to one of the studio reps. I said this really did feel like a director's cut. I don't know what else they could have put into this film. The creativity that we've seen in fight scenes previously that we loved, and you mentioned a few of those, I don't feel like there were as many in this. I felt like it was kind of the rinse, wash, and repeat, seeing the same types of fights over and over again, even in the same types of locations. There was one scene that was taking place in this room where they were hiding behind these different components to fight each other, and we'd seen that kinds of thing before, and we've also seen, I don't know how many close-up headshot I can see in a film and do it in a creative way. We continue to see those, but less creatively, just kind of the same kinds of stuff. And dialogue, John Wick had maybe 5 minutes of total dialogue in this whole movie, and I'm exaggerating, under exaggerating. He had a bit more than that, but not a lot, Thomas. Not a lot of dialogue from John Wick.
Yeah, and some of the supporting cast gets probably a lot more dialogue than John Wick actually. And there are certain sequences early on in the film that focus more on the supporting cast and the supporting characters. We have Donnie Yen, Hiroyuki Sanada, and Rina Sawayama. And I think focusing on their characters was the filmmaker's way of teasing that the franchise has to evolve and change trajectory at some point if it's going to continue. And we already know there's a spinoff coming up with Ana de Armas, the ballerina, and she's a Russian assassin. And they do tease more future storylines and character conflicts as the film goes on. But one person I want to talk about in particular that I mentioned, Donnie Yen, who is a true legend of Eastern action cinema, and he's crossed over into various American productions over the past decade, mostly in supporting roles, but ultimately in this movie, I don't know that I go quite so far as to call him a co-lead with Keanu Reeves, but he's pretty close to fitting that criteria. I was drawn to his character's emotional journey almost to the same degree that I was connected with this continuing, evolving arc of John Wick and his character. They're old friends, there's a brotherhood between them, but circumstances have them pitted against each other. And later on in the show, we might get a chance to talk about Creed 3, and there's a similar storyline there with brother figures who are now facing off against each other.
Yeah, Yen was phenomenal in this, and I'll agree with you. I think that he definitely had more speaking lines. I think if you compare the two, more speaking lines than John Wick. And an interesting thing about his character, he played this blind assassin, and we've seen him play a blind character before in Rogue One, and you reminded me of that. I'm like, yeah, that's why it just felt so natural to see him in something like this. To me, he shined quite well in this film, and I loved his action sequences. There were some unique things he did, utilizing his blindness and how he took care of some of his opponents. There were some wonderful set pieces. The cinematography, I've got to mention that. The cinematography, the lighting, the sound, all of those things were superb and spectacular in this from the opening, and that did not let up. There were some choices of utilizing overhead cameras looking at fight scenes within a building from room to room to room. Really, really loved that. Not the first time that we've seen that kind of thing happen, but the first time I think we've seen it in a John Wick film. And that really spoke to me. Those were things I really did appreciate about John Wick 4.
Yeah, the overhead shot that you're mentioning, it's an extended long take scene, and really that's one I'm probably going to be thinking about for the rest of my life. And it's an homage to the famous shot at the end of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, where the camera pans overhead throughout multiple rooms of an apartment, and it's in the aftermath of a very violent event in Taxi Driver. And in this case, it's 5 minutes straight of John Wick just wreaking havoc on dozens and dozens of assassins who have been dispatched to take him out, and the camera following the action, painting from room to room. So very much it is influenced by Scorsese, and also De Palma is known for doing that a lot in his films. We also get a great 360 shot with John Wick. The best way I can describe this is John Wick at the center of a swirling vortex of motorcycle riding assassins.
Yes, the roundabout scene in Paris was a phenomenal scene as well, and that went on for several minutes. I will say I love those two scenes. Are my favorite two scenes of the film as far as action sequences.
Yeah, I think it might be the most entertaining use of a European traffic circle in a movie since National Lampoon's European Vacation.
Yes, I knew you were going to go there, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
I had to.
Any other thoughts you want to make sure you share, negatives, positives?
One more, I want to mention Scott Adkins. And Scott Adkins, I got to interview him a few years ago for a film he did called Legacy of Lies. And he's one of the most prolific action martial artist actors of the past decade, two decades now. He pops up all over the place. He does like 5 movies a year, and he's just absolutely incredible. And when I saw he was going to be in this film, I was like, okay, that makes sense that he's going to pop up in like the most popular American action franchise. But wasn't expecting him to look the way he did. He's in these incredible prosthetics. It's almost like a Kingpin, Wilson Fisk-like character. But what I love even more is that despite being presented as this massively, heavy and cartoonish type individual, he still gets to put his martial arts expertise and his hand-to-hand combat skill set on display. So, you're not expecting him to, if you went into this not knowing who Scott Adkins was, you would be completely shocked to see the mobility that this guy has. And the scene with Scott Adkins facing off against Keanu Reeves does not disappoint.
And I'll say that up until this point, Reeves has dispatched hundreds of people already. And so you're like, okay, this guy's not going to stand a chance one-on-one against John Wick. But this is really, I think, John Wick's first true competitor that can take him down in this particular movie. And he does take him down a notch or two or a floor or two in a particular crazy dance party sequence at some dance club where all this chaos is going around. People are getting beat up and killed. The dancers don't even care. They don't pay attention to it. It's just like another Saturday for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much just like the typical dance clubs we have here at the Manning residence on Friday nights. So yeah, so it's kind of felt like I was right at home. So.
Well, John Wick 4 for me did not truly satisfy. I loved the first 3, and I felt that the franchise continued to get better in different ways. This one left me feeling, other than the scenes that I mentioned, it left me feeling that I'd seen this really before, and it was too long for me. I think that a lot of people are going to love this, especially those who just love pure action. There's a lot of pure action, not a whole lot of pure story in this, and honestly, that's not why you go to see a John Wick film. I do feel like this leaves it that if we did not see another John Wick film, it did answer some questions and had a fitting conclusion. So if John Wick is gone, I think this does that. But I was not in love with this film, in love with aspects of it, but generally it left me feeling like I just think it was overkill. And I think I'd love to have seen this about 30 minutes shorter. I think they could have cut some of those scenes, and I would have enjoyed it even more.
Yeah, it could have been shorter, but at the same time, I'm not complaining that we got 30 to 40 extra minutes of a bunch of John Wick madness. And yeah, I know you said you liked it, didn't love it. I understand exactly where you're coming from, and everything you said completely made sense, but I'm still going to say I'm in the full-on love camp, and I think I'll give it a B+. Just objectively speaking, you laid out your points and made some excellent points, but I think just personally, I still loved it, but I'm going to give it a B+ for John Wick 4.
Okay, and for me, I'm settling at a B-. Action, just pure action fans that don't care about anything else but action, they're going to be more in your range of a B+ or something like that. But I think I wanted a little bit more out of this than I got. John Wick 4 in theaters now. Glad we got a chance to check it out. This is a heavy R rating. I'll let you know that for violence. And it is violence on a scale unlike you've probably not seen in quite a while. So take that in mind as you check out this or choose not to check it out. I would not take small kids. This is not a small kid kind of film for anybody. And I did see a kid at this screening that I thought probably shouldn't have been there. But I will leave it at that. We are going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back, briefly talk about Creed 3, and also hopefully we'll be able to talk about a game that I don't think Thomas has ever played right after this quick intermission.
Ça va pour les gars.
Come on. The only way John Wick will ever have freedom and peace is in death.
Yeah, not really.